Hey guys, I got some more content for the 2002 project this week. So if you want to watch some really poorly filmed progress, then watch it and leave a comment. Thanks. So I got the oil pan gasket surface cleaned up. I am now dealing with this mess of an oil pan. This is the E30 oil pan that's going to have to go in the car. If anybody wants to come over and help me clean this up, that would be great. I also saw that I don't think there's any way this dipstick tube is going to fit right here. Don't know what we're going to do about that, but we'll see how it goes once I get this cleaned up and fit it up in there. Maybe we can bend the tube or something and make it work. This is the mess that I have with the oil dipstick. See, it covers up this hole. This is the power steering pump that needs to bolt up to there. So I need to do something with that. It kind of fits that way, but I'm thinking maybe I can bend this tube up this way and then bring it further back, and then I'll have to do something up here. So we'll see what happens. Next time I offer to work on my friends' vehicles, I'm going to ask that they bring an engine that isn't completely covered in 20-year-old grease, because this sucks. Talking to you, Charles. This is what I came up with for the dipstick. Don't mind the blood. I cut myself. I maneuvered the dipstick tube here so that I could get it up between. I did have to remove the alternator again. I did trim the boss on the power steering pump a little bit. I know it's a little tight up here, but I'm going to wait until I get it in the car, figure out where the intake boot is going to be, and if anything else needs to move. I'll probably weld a hold down to this bolt here, because I did have to cut off this here to fit it together. So anyway, we'll keep at it. Before I put the engine in the car with the transmission, I was hoping to try to figure out where the shifter was gonna line up. This is, I believe, the E36 setup. I think this is what came with this transmission. Just by looking at it though, it looks like it's going to be too far back. This is the shifter setup that came with the car. I don't even know what transmission this came out of. It looks different than the plate that shows with the instructions from Classic Daily as far as what they do to make the setup work. So I'm going to have to search around and see what this is out of. This obviously doesn't have any way to mount up to this transmission. I think most of the transmissions that Classic Daily uses with the M42s is out of the E30. So they talk about cutting this off to clear the tunnel, but if I have to use this type of a shifter setup, then I'm not going to be able to cut this off because I need this mounting point here. So I will probably just fit this back into the car. Then that way I can get a measurement from here to here and figure out where I have to go with the shifter setup. So I'll take this off and then hopefully try to fit this into the car and then go from there. Just a little update on the M42 going into the 2002. Today I attempted to test fit the engine in the car, and safe to say it didn't fit. I removed the oil pan and the front sump, trying to give us a little bit more room. I took the leveler off, hung it strictly from the front so that the engine would tilt straight down, the transmission being down. Obviously, that still didn't give us enough room to get the transmission back under the car, but not run into the front lower corner. My next step is going to be removing the intake manifold That's the suggestion that Classic Dailies has to twist the engine basically into the car. So that's the next plan. We did get the steering shaft unhooked from the, was it, Pitman arm and whatever, the steering arm, I guess. Those were snug, so, but we did get that drop, but that still didn't give us enough room to fit it down in the car. So I will be removing the intake manifold and going at it with a second attempt to test fit it down in the car. I've been working on this engine here for a little bit, removing the supercharger, and it didn't come off too bad. So here's the supercharger itself. It's a pretty simple unit once you get everything unplugged and get your lines and stuff out of the way. Just the basic intake manifold here, the blower, the back housing for the throttle. I believe back here there is some sort of we call it like a blow-off valve or a valve for closing, releasing pressure from the intake manifold. I believe that's what that does. As far as the engine itself, the intake valves are, let me see if I can get in there with this light, are super clean. No, it's not focusing very well, but really happy with that. I am kind of glad that I pulled the supercharger and the intake off, because a lot of these hoses are really crusty. So I want to also clean up some of this nonsense here. So anyway, I will go ahead and try to refit this in the car, I think, hopefully tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Hey everybody, this is where we're at. I got the engine down inside the car, finally. Man, what a struggle, especially by yourself. Anyway, it's on its own mounts. The transmission is held up with a floor jack, that little guy. The transmission doesn't fit worth a crap in the tunnel. There's a couple brackets that are, I believe, welded to the tunnel that I think are going to have to come out. And then it looks like the slave cylinder is rubbing into the tunnel, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to do there either. The supercharger, while it looks like it's there installed, is not. It is still a bit of a ways off the cylinder head. It is contacting the brake booster right here. So that booster is going to have to come out. A friend of mine was telling me that TII boosters are smaller. They're like a dual diaphragm, smaller in diameter, so I'm going to have to go that route, I think. I'll look a little bit more into that, but I think for now the booster will come off so that I can set the supercharger down on there, make sure everything else fits. This is mostly just a test fit, I think, for the engine. It's definitely going to have to come back out. I haven't fixed the oil leaks, doesn't have an oil pan on it. But everything else is close. I think I will I'll probably trim the sheet metal down there where the pulley is for the AC compressor. I think it'll be able to stay there. I'm still waiting on a header, but that supposedly, should fit. It's made for the car. I have quite a bit of room on the back here, a lot more than I thought I would have between the firewall and the cylinder head and the intake manifold, because there are coolant hoses over here and here. There's a fuel line that comes out of the firewall. I don't know why they do that. That seems stupid to me, but it's 50 years ago German, so who the heck knows. Anyway, I'll work on this some more, see if I can get that supercharger bolted down on there with the brake booster out. Got the supercharger mounted up to the intake. I did remove the booster. It does fit now without the booster, but I have no room for another booster. This bolt hole here, which is super snug to this elbow, is right here, so I have basically zero room. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do for a booster. So I will research that and we'll come up with some sort of a solution. In a cool change of events, I think I might have a solution. Most of you guys may not recognize this. This is a booster assembly electric out of a Tesla or several other hybrid models. I think this one might actually be out of a Honda CR-V that I had for testing purposes on my E30. I actually have this very similar unit in an E30 with an Ecotec 2-liter GM engine in it because the master cylinder wouldn't fit in that car either. And I think this is going to be a solution for this car. Luckily enough, the bolt pattern between these old BMWs and these Teslas is the same, so it fit right up. And then if I turn the unit upside down from the way it normally would be, it clears the supercharger, just barely, but I think there's enough there. It also clears the steering shaft on the bottom side. Obviously, I'll have to come up with some sort of a brake line solution and then a reservoir, but I did a similar thing on the E30 and it works out, and it works great. It requires 3 wires to run it. Doesn't require any programming or anything. You can run it in a default mode, so I think this might be the solution for this car to be able to run the supercharger and have power brakes. So I will keep you updated on what I have to do to make this work. Thanks for watching.